Is Julius Randle still on track to have an all-star season? Checking in on the Timberwolves' big man rotation and recent changes next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy Timberwolves game day. The Wolves take on the battered Knicks tonight. We'll talk about that matchup and who is missing, and I guess who can actually play for the New York Knicks tonight's game at Target Center. So we'll get to that toward the end of the show. Most of today, though, I want to talk about the Timberwolves lineups, and specifically the front court. Naz Reid lately playing really well. Julius Randle scuffling after having the best start to a season in his career. We'll talk about the overall big man rotation, some of the Rudy stuff, the lineups, what the three big lineup has looked like to this point, and kind of sort of project out what that looks like here moving forward. And then we'll get to Wolves Knicks here in a little bit. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So checking in on the big man rotation, that's the first thing I want to hit here today. Recently, we've seen, I talked about this a little bit on the postgame pod on Monday following the win against the Bucks on Sunday night. Recently, Naz Reid has played really, really well. And Naz, of course, got off to a rough start to the season. Of course, the tragedy with his sister late in the offseason and, the off-the-court stuff obviously impacting, and understandably so, the start of Naz Reid's season. And he's had some flashes here recently where he's played a lot better, and especially the past week or so, he's been great. Julius Randle has been exactly the opposite. I mean, he was playing at an all-NBA level earlier this season, and even right now, the body of work for Julius Randle is at an all-star caliber level and arguably the best of his career to this point. His overall stat line and what he's been able to contribute, the advanced stats would agree with that. But more recently, it's been pretty inefficient for Julius Randle. So I wanted to dig in a little bit on the overall lineup, pairing some of the on-off numbers, the three big numbers we'll get into in a second. But we could start with Randle and Naz specifically before we add Rudy into the mix. Over the last 4 games, which is admittedly a very small sample, we're talking the last 10 days, essentially, Julius Randle has averaged 19 points a game on 37.9% shooting, just 22% from outside the arc. Only 71% at the free throw line, although he's gotten to the line an average of 8 times per game. Of course, skewed by that 16 free throw performance against OKC. And again, just 22% outside the arc and only 7.5 rebounds per game, which is also a little bit on the low side for him. That's just over the last 4. Now, of course, the overall body of work, the scoring output for Julius Randle would currently be the 4th highest of his career, behind his 3 all-star seasons. Those are the only 3 years he scored more than 22.5 points per game. Last year in Minnesota, he was under 19 a game. The 2-point percentage this season is down just a little from last season, but in line where it's been in his all-star seasons in the past. The 3-point percentage is down from where it was last year and just a shade above his career mark, which again is only a little over 33%. I think a lot of times people forget, he had the 141% 3-point shooting season when he won Most Improved Player, and he was on NBA's second team. And then he was in the 3-point contest a couple of seasons ago, even when he finished the year shooting 34% for 3. He's not an elite 3-point shooter, and teams leave him open for a reason. But he started the year so hot. He was 49% coming out of October through the first 2-3 weeks of the season. And then since then has been 30%. And so, of course, that means he's basically 34% for the season. So the last few games have been tough for Julius Randle. At the same time, Naz Reid has played great. And the overall body of work for Naz this year, I think, is pretty much in line with what he's done each of the last 2 seasons. And, of course, I made the case in the offseason. Look, Naz Reid was just as good last year, if not better, than what he was in his 6th Man of the Year campaign in 2023-24. Remember, last year he finished 5th in 6th Man of the Year voting. Even though the scoring was up, even though the rebounding was up, even though the assist numbers were up, it's just he didn't shoot the 3 quite as well. And he started a couple more games, and he's a known commodity now, and so it was less exciting to vote for him for sixth man of the year. Now this year, the scoring is still above where it was in his sixth man of the year season. The 3-point shooting is actually even down just slightly from where it was last year, but some of the other production is up for Naz Reid. The assist rate again up. Like in his sixth man of the year season, his assist rate was only 8%. He's getting close to 14% there. The rebound rate is up over where it was that season. The turnover rate is slightly higher, but the usage rate is lower. So that's kind of the one area. And then the other thing that isn't as good is the shot selection. The free throw rate is at a career low right now this season for Naz Reid, just a 0.12, which means for every field goal attempt he shoots, he only gets to the line 0.12 times, which is the lowest of his career. And his three-point rate is at the highest of his career, all while his shooting percentage from outside the arc is his lowest in 4 seasons. So, getting Naz to get to the basket a little bit more, to be aggressive off the dribble, like that's what makes him so dangerous as a face-up player. His athleticism, his length, his first step, the ability to get past guys and take advantage of the fact that he is a plus 3-point shooter. Although over the last 2 seasons, he's really been a league average 3-point shooter. Still valuable for a guy of his size, no doubt. But I think seeing Naz attack off the dribble would be a really valuable thing to have. Now, he has done that the last couple of games. Like that kind of coincides with what he's or his increase in production here recently has coincided with shooting the ball better from 2 and shooting the ball more frequently from 2. He was 3 of 4 from 2 on Sunday against Milwaukee. He was 5 of 6 against OKC and got to the line 7 times. Now, he's always killed the Thunder, but that's huge. So, like, take that same 4-game stretch where Julius has struggled, and Naz is shooting 70% from 2-point range over the last 4 games. Overall, 46% for the field, only 30% from 3. But again, he's averaging 16 points a game and shooting 70% from 2 and getting to the line 2.5 times a game. He didn't get to the line at all against the Bucks, but if you take a total of over the last 4 games, he's been to the line 10 times. I mean, that's a little lower than you'd like it to be, but it's an uptick than where he'd been for most of the season. In fact, prior to this last stretch, he'd only attempted more than 3 free throws in a game twice. And that was the first week of the season. He got 4 free throws in a game 2 times. He got 7 in a game against OKC. And overall, again, 10 over a 4-game span, that's 2.5 free throws attempts per game. That's more than what we've seen for most of the season. That's going to be a good thing for Naz Reid individually and for the Timberwolves offense. If Naz puts the ball on the floor, gets to the line a little bit more often, and is a little more aggressive off the dribble, and related to that, I guess, also the offensive glass. But for him, it's more within the flow of the half court. It's not exactly like Rudy creating his own opportunities off offensive rebounds. That's not Naz's game, right? He's typically further from the basket. But he needs to put the ball on the floor, be more aggressive, be good into, because Naz doesn't shoot mid-range jumpers, right? So a Naz 2-point percentage means he's getting to the rim and he's scoring. It's not mid-range jumpers. It's not Julius Randle. It's not Anthony Edwards. It's not even Jaden McDaniels who's shooting the 10-foot fallaways. It's if Naz is shooting 2s, it means he's getting to the rim. And again, over his last 4 games, he's averaging 5 2-point attempts per game and shooting 70% of those. That's a really good thing, and it's ultimately going to lead to more free throw attempts. So the positive thing for the Wolves is this Naz kind of resurgence over the last week and a half or so has coincided with Julius's, we'll call it a swoon that he's in right now. Can they get things firing on all cylinders? I mean, that's kind of the trick, right? On the one hand, it's part of the reason why it's the reason why depth matters, because you have guys that can step up when other guys struggle, but also can they both play well at the same time and make Chris Finch's job even more difficult? Like, he did a good thing in the third quarter against the Bucks when the Wolves went on that 20-0 run on Sunday by pulling Julius Randle 3 minutes into the quarter, not even, and putting Naz Reid in, and the Wolves offense hummed right along. Now, for most of the season, Randle's been better than Naz offensively, so it's going to be pushing the right buttons, pulling the right levers, and if these guys could play well at the same time, for Julius Randle, it's shot selection and starting games better. Remember, he started 2 of 10 last week in that loss to Memphis last Wednesday. And for Naz, it's getting to the basket and the 2-point attempts on top of shooting the 3, right? Like, yes, he can still shoot 3s. He's a good 3-point shooter. He needs to shoot 3s. But can he put the ball before he gets to the basket? And also Naz has been a good passer too. I mentioned this earlier, but Naz Reid's assist rate this year is I believe it's a career high. I know it's a career high pretty easily over last year, which was a career high. And you can live with a slightly higher turnover rate if the assist rate is higher. Naz has been more creative with the ball in his hands. So that's kind of a secondary thing he can do on top of just getting to the basket more often. I want to talk about the lineup data next, what the Wolves double big lineups look like, in addition to their big trio, the three bigs played together, how successful that's been in still limited but growing number of possessions. We'll do that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. And that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is at its absolute best when the game starts to shift. A receiver might get hot, maybe a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. Plus, you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Shifting sports back to basketball. Tonight, the Wolves are 8.5-point favorites at home against the Knicks. I mentioned earlier, a lot of guys are out for the Knicks. We'll talk about that later. But, Minnesota, another important win going into a very difficult game on Christmas Day at Denver. I don't mind Minnesota minus 8.5 in tonight's game. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right. Talking a little bit of lineup data. So, per usual, Rudy Gobert, of course, is right up there in terms of on-off numbers for Minnesota. When Rudy's on the court, Minnesota's a 98th percentile defense. They hold opponents to 14.5 points less per 100 possessions than when he's off the court. Now, as always, the on-off numbers are both a kind of underscoring how good the player is and also exposing the depth behind the player. So with Rudy Gobert off the floor, Minnesota's not a good defensive team. They played around with the zone. That's been mostly successful. They played around with, different coverages. They switch more stuff when Rudy's off the floor. There's different ways around it. And really the goal is, can you be passable defensively with him off the floor as long as you're dominant with him on the floor? And the offense has actually gotten a little better. It's still not good, the on-off for Rudy on offense, but it all nets out to Rudy being the second best player in terms of on-off on the Wolves behind only Dante DiVincenzo. Interestingly, Julius Randle's third, and it's the inverse of Rudy Gobert. We've talked about this in the past, and the numbers have mostly held up. The offense is awesome with Randle on the floor, and the defense is bad with Randle on the floor. The inverse of Rudy Gobert, right? So when you look at the two-man lineup, or I should say the lineups when you compare, these big men together. So Rudy and Julius together, just the two of them, and I guess we may as well say no Naz Reid because it takes out the 50-plus possessions that they played the three of them together. So Rudy and Julius together with no Naz Reid, those lineups are a plus 11.4 on cleaning the glass. So 91st percentile lineups. Excuse me. And that includes, the preferred starting lineup with Ant and Dante DiVincenzo and Jaden McDaniels. That lineup is a 71st percentile unit. But again, overall, these lineups with Gobert and Randle together are 91st percentile. There's no major trends beyond that. Like that's all of the various permutations of the preferred starters. So when Ant's hurt and Conley starts, right? A couple of games there where both Ant and Conley were out and Bones Highland started. All three of those lineups have been positive. Plus 10 for the preferred starting lineup, plus 22 for the lineup with Conley, no Ant, and plus 14 for the lineup with no Conley and no Ant, and with Bones in the starting lineup, which is interesting. It's only 91 possessions, but still interesting. Now, if we flip it and we go Rudy and Naz with Randle off the court, this is, again, reflective of what I was talking about earlier, that Randle's been better than Naz Reid for most of the season. Still 67th percentile lineups. Now, no single lineup with Rudy and Naz and no Julius Randle has reached 100 possessions, which is really interesting. Again, Randle being a starter, that's, of course, going to increase those. But there's three different lineups with Randle and no Naz that had over 100 possessions. And the most possessions played together for these lineups would be the Conley, DiVincenzo, McDaniels, Naz Reid, Gobert group is a plus 8.3. Overall, lineups with Gobert and Naz and no Julius Randle are 67th percentile, plus 3.4, and they're much more dominant defensively than offensively, which means the Gobert influence and at least the versatility of Naz Reid on the defensive end outweighs, some of the offensive upside of Naz Reid. But that also shows how good Julius Randle has been offensively. So Gobert and Reid lineups are just 5th percentile offensively, but they're so good defensively that they're still a net positive. So I thought that was a little bit interesting. Yes, it reflects that Julius Randle has had a better season to date than Naz Reid, but I didn't think it would be quite that dramatic in terms of the overall 5-man lineup data. Now, the 3 big lineup, which we saw at the end of, was it the Memphis game last week? We saw quite a bit of it, kind of a little bit in desperation. And it actually worked okay, the 3 of them together. We saw it against OKC, actually, as well, and it worked really well for a stretch there when, of course, Chris Finch had been ejected and Mike Inori was running the show. And it worked really well. Gobert, Reid, and Randle together. Overall this season, just 51 possessions, so a very small sample. But it's all positive. They're like, in 51 possessions, they're a plus 17.5. It would be a 97th percentile lineup if this lineup had played more together. They're 92nd percentile offensively, 94th percentile defensively. The lineup that's used the most with those 3 is with Jaden McDaniels and Dante DiVincenzo. More than half of their 51 possessions of the 3 bigs together are with McDaniels and DiVincenzo. And those lineups are a plus 30 net rating in 26 possessions. So could we see more of the triple big lineup? I mean, I hope so. I think it's unexpectedly or expectedly, unsurprisingly, it's going to be very matchup dependent. Now, with Naz playing better recently, I think that makes it that much more likely that we see those guys play together. The overall on-off numbers for Naz are not super pretty this year, I think, but they're trending more towards kind of neutral. Whereas, like we've seen Mike Conley's on-off get a little bit worse. Typically, he's a really good on-off guy, and part of that's because Bones Highland has played so well as well. Recently that impacts it a little bit. Ants has leveled off. His aren't great right now, and it's certainly not the end-all be-all. But I think that it's super important that as Randle is in this rough patch, we get to see Naz Reid elevate a little bit and play as well as he has at times over the last couple seasons. And the level which Naz has played at over the last 4 games is that 6 man of the year type level. And it's going to be super important as the schedule gets tougher. We get into January, there's more back-to-backs. Inevitably, there could be some rest built in for somebody like a Rudy, who I know doesn't like to rest, but he's going to have to at some point. We've already seen Conley and Ant both go down here recently. So the depth is really going to shine through, or it needs to shine through, actually. I mean, the bench scoring obviously hasn't been good overall. And that's, again, another indictment on how Naz has played to date, well knowing that it can improve. And Naz, there is more there when it comes to Naz Reid. So definitely keep an eye on that big man rotation here moving forward. All right. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the matchup tonight, Wolves and Knicks. We'll talk about who's out for New York. Briefly discuss the last time these 2 teams faced off, which was a long time ago. And of course, lots of players are out now. Guys were out then. We'll kind of try and sift through some of that, tell you what to expect here in Wolves Knicks. We'll do that here next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by Robinhood. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again, channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. I neglected to mention this earlier, so I wanted to mention the Everydayer Club. Of course, thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Wolves. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every other major podcast network. And you can find that out there. So be sure that you go sign up. Yeah, I mean, it's lockdownwolves.supercast.com, lockdownwolves.supercast.com. You also get invited to the members only Locked On Everyday Air Club Discord server, has a group chat just for listeners of this show. And again, the big thing, the ad-free audio feed is awesome. So go check it out at lockdownwolves.supercast.com. Okay. So let's close this thing out by talking Wolves Knicks. We have not seen the New York Knicks since week 2 of the season. And this was Ant's first game back after he missed a couple with the injury. I think it was the hamstring, if I remember right, early in the season. This was in Madison Square Garden. Minnesota was actually up at halftime, but the Knicks had a big third quarter, and Ant did not play well in his first game back. He was a minus 25 in 29 minutes in that game. And this was it was a Julius Randle game. Like, he had 32. Dante had 21, both in there, of course, returns to the Garden. And then for the Knicks, OG Anunoby had 25 and 8 against Minnesota. Jalen Brunson had 23 and 10. And it was it got ugly in the second half. Minnesota actually ended up losing by, what was the final? I think they lost by 21 in this game. 23. So really the only true blowout loss for Minnesota this year. And of course there's caveats to everything, like Ant's first game back, the whole thing, but it's like their only true blowout loss. And against a good team. Now, talking about the game tonight, Jalen Brunson is out, managing the sore ankle injury. OG Anunoby's out again. Yabusele is out with, I think, an illness for this game. So a lot of key rotation guys missing for the Knicks. Now, still a formidable opponent. Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson, Mikal Bridges, still guys that are still a good team, still a well-coached team, still a team that has won overall. They just lost to the Sixers the other day, but they've won, I think, 8 of the last 9 games, and more broadly, like 13 of the last 15, I believe, is what is the streak that they've been on. They're 20 and 8. So still a difficult opponent, no doubt. But of course, missing 2 of their best 3 players in Anunoby and Brunson really does matter. They both played in the win over the Knicks, the win over the Heat the other day. Brunson had 47 and 8 in that game, and Anunoby had 18 in that game. Cat only scored 2 points and was in a bit of, as he does, a bit of foul trouble. But of course, going back to Target Center, who knows with Karl Anthony Towns what's going to happen in this one. So you got to pay attention to that. So a difficult matchup nonetheless. Overall this season, the Knicks are the second best offensive team. That changes drastically with Anunoby and Brunson out. Defensively, they're 14th. With no Anunoby, that really matters. Now, there's no Brunson to have to try and hide, but with no Anunoby, I mean, I think that's actually a bigger advantage for Minnesota, is that a Knicks defense that is already kind of middling in terms of their success this season loses their best overall defender in Anunoby. They've, of course, still got interior defense, but Minnesota should be able to get to their spots outside the arc and knock down threes against this team with no Anunoby. Anthony Edwards should be able to get what he wants against this team. As of right now, Minnesota's, relatively healthy. We'll see about Jaden McDaniels. Let me see if there's an update here on McDaniels as I record this. He is questionable for tonight's game. Besides that, the Wolves are relatively healthy. Obviously, Conley and Ant recently coming back from their injuries, Jalen Clark as well, but this and TJ Shannon, but the Wolves could be entirely healthy. McDaniels is the only one that is truly questionable for Tuesday's game as of now. So a winnable game for Minnesota. I think 3-point shooting is going to be key. They obviously missed their first 13 threes against the Bucks. Overall this season, the Wolves are still a really good 3-point shooting team. As of right now, they're 6th in the league in percentage. They've been top 5 basically all season. So they need to again, shooting 30% multiple games in a row is going to bring that number down, but they're still a plus 3-point shooting team, and that's going to be important against an Anunoby-less Knicks team. I think that's going to be important in this game specifically. Now, for the Knicks, which is, again, a little bit trickier given some of the guys that are out, but the Knicks are a good offensive rebounding team. That should still be the case, with Cat, with Mitchell Robinson, that's something else to look out for. So defensive rebounding for Minnesota. Overall, the Wolves have been a good defensive rebounding team this season. They're 12th currently in opponent offensive rebound rate, uncleaning the glass. But Wolves fans know that thing it comes and goes, right? It's a roller coaster when it comes to defensive rebounding. You'll have these games where they'll give up 18 offensive rebounds to the opponent. And a Brunsonless Knicks team is dangerous in the sense that they're going to be a little less predictable. They're probably going to crash the glass a little bit harder. And teams know the Wolves can be vulnerable there. The teams know the Wolves can be vulnerable on the defensive glass or for the opponent than the offensive glass. And so don't be surprised if the Knicks have a little bit more of a focus even on offensive rebounding in this game. And that's kind of one of those, that and pace. Now the Knicks play slowly, and I don't think they're going to play any faster with no Brunson, but pace and opponent offensive rebounding are two areas that the Wolves are generally pretty good at controlling, but teams can exploit them if they make it a focus. And I think the defensive glass is what I would look out for the most. And on the other side of the floor, if the Wolves knock down open threes, I think they should be okay in this game. They should be able to score enough against a team that's missing OG Anunoby, who is such a big piece of their defense. So I said this earlier. I mean, the Wolves are favored by 8.5 points right now, given the injuries to the Knicks. And I don't know. I wouldn't mind taking Minnesota minus 8.5. I don't think there'll be like a looking ahead to the Denver game on Christmas Day. I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, who knows with this team, but I don't mind Minnesota minus 8.5. I kind of think the Wolves do win this game. They've been, the Bucks game notwithstanding, overall trending in the right direction. And I think the coaching staff will be able to impart how important like winning a game like this against a short-handed Knicks team with the Nuggets upcoming. And then you flip the calendar. Yes, the rest of December is a little bit easier. Brooklyn, Chicago, Atlanta, still, some danger there, especially with like, say, Atlanta on New Year's Eve. But look ahead, and it gets pretty tough in January with a couple of Miamis, a couple of Clevelands. You get San Antonio, you get Houston for the first time, you get San Antonio again, you get a few back-to-backs mixed in there, which we haven't had in a while. Things get a little dicey. You got to bank these wins while you can, and it's important for them to be able to do that throughout this week. All right, that's all I got for you today here on the show. Of course, we'll be back. There should be a live postcast tonight. I believe our guy Jack's going to do it live, perhaps solo from Target Center this evening following Wolves Knicks. So be sure to tune into that. We go live after basically every Wolves game on the Locked On Wolves YouTube channel. Then that audio can be found right here on the audio feed for Locked On Wolves. And then I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do the post-game pod. We'll talk Wolves Knicks, and whatever goes down here this evening, hopefully another Wolves win. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. And a reminder, if you need a last-minute holiday gift or someone keeps asking what you want, make it easy. Ask for the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of this show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through that lockdownwolves.supercast.com URL I mentioned earlier. Again, it's the Everydayer Club. So be sure to go check that out at lockdownwolves.supercast.com. Of course, this Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the very same Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.